Okay, we're with Paul from Wells Aquatics. First, Paul, what is your position at Wells Aquatics?
I do everything,
Okay.
or I guess they would call me a general manager.
Okay. But like, what's a day? What's a day on the job for you look like?
So normally, she's not here. We have our superintendent that's managing the jobs day in, day out. They're the eyes and ears in the field. And right now, she's doing what we call a pre-construction meeting. We actually meet on site before we start building, before we put a shovel in the ground, to kind of make sure all our details from sales to production. This is what we call the production phase. All that's carried through. Because if it's not in the contract, it doesn't get done. But we want to make sure that part, sales to production, is seamless. So all that detail carries through. Right now, they're about to start digging again. We've got some dirt shoveled out of here. And they kind of just maintain the job site as they go. The back wall being plywood, because that wall will be exposed when the job is done. So it keeps a much cleaner finish, and it's easier for stucco guys or tile guys to put their product on after. There's other products you can put on the walls that just make it a little more difficult later on in the project for you guys following it up. And what we always like to say is, if you're not setting the next person up in line for success, you're not doing your job. So these guys, the way they're shaving the walls, the way they're raking everything out, they're making sure it's ready for the steel guy to come out. The steel guy is doing his steel correctly to make sure that's done for the shell guys or the shoot. So it's always thinking about the next person in line, who's following you up, because you're not necessarily taking care of it, but your buddy behind you, the pool industry, the tight industry, your buddy behind you is following you up, and you're going to hear about it if you didn't set him up. And what we do say was, once we get past the shell phase, now this is the excavation phase, if the shell comes out right, everything's downhill from there.
Talk a little bit about when a customer is sitting down at the table and they're deciding to choose Wells Aquatics, and how do you explain to them what's going on underneath the ground? How, when you don't know what's happening underneath, can you just kind of explain how that works?
Yeah, we do. We explain it as best we can, but just like anything, if you write it down, you read it on paper, when you go from paper to dirt, things change. And you might not comprehend what we're trying to explain to you, but it'll make sense if it comes up. And we just manage it through the process. We communicate with you through the process and explain what it is that we were trying to see before. But those pipes and those wires coming out of the wall right there, that's your irrigation system. Your zone lines and the communication wire for your valve boxes. So we don't necessarily know where. Sometimes we do know where they are. Sometimes we don't. But we try and plan around these things. We were out here ahead of this job, so we already cut and capped the irrigation and shut this zone off that would affect our open hole. This is the most uncontrollable part of the job, because obviously we're just playing with dirt and an open hole here. We get rain. Summertime is always the most difficult time to build, not just because of the heat, but because of the rain. We get rain and we don't have gutters in the house. All these walls are possibly washing in. Now we do things to mitigate that. We plastic the walls. We reroute gutters and downspouts. We do as much as we can to control that, but it sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it does cave in. It can get real messy, but that's what we do every day. Now, Tony's the most important guy on the job in this, and you've got the most work cut out for him. He's shaping the pool. He's also checking your elevations as we're digging the depth. Because what we will do, it's a little bit deeper. We over dig it, because if we walk out front, you'll see what we call 57 stone or crushed feet. It's rock. We rock the whole bottom of the pool. This pool will stand up real nice. It's real stable, knock on wood for now, but we rock the bottom of the pool to secure the substrate. So when we put our steel and our brick on top of it, it's not pushing the steel down into the dirt. Steel is what gives your concrete the tensile strength, what we call that flexibility. When your pool is cracked, you're going to crack lengthwise or because of the ring. So we had extra steel in our pools and our floors. We'll see in another job. But what I want to point out, what you won't see in this job, is the amount of rock we put in the floor. So when you have a 200-pound guy with a concrete hose over his shoulder, he's now 300 pounds. It had a tendency to push the steel into the dirt. Well, we want the dirt as hard as possible to hold that steel up when that brick is laying on when the steel is laying on the brick. We may see that in the next job. We probably will see that in the next job. But that's making sure our walls are straight up and down, so they're in curved walls. Our steel won't be touching the dirt. Again, Tony's the most important guy on the job at the moment.
Go get Bob.
Alex is pretty important too, but you know, Tony's the most important. But we do make a mess in the backyard, that's for sure. It's tearing it all apart before putting it back together. That's got to be patient in this process because the end result is always what you're looking at. When you get to that end result, you almost forget about all this unless you took before and after pictures or this video.